Hey there, internet friends. Trevor Starkey here with another episode of Wrestling Wednesday. This week I'm doing a little something different. There hasn't been too much in the way of movement in the road to SummerSlam, like the storylines I kind of touched on last week. A lot of it's been just kind of treading water this week. With a couple weeks out, doesn't really make, there hasn't really been too much movement. So instead of really diving into the going-ons in Raw or SmackDown this week, I want to talk about a couple of the wrestling-adjacent things that helped get me back into wrestling, in the months before I kind of really returned. One of those being PAX and the PAX Rumble and the wrestling show that the people over at League of Heels put together at the big PAX events. I started checking that out a couple years ago. PAX Prime, the final PAX Prime, quote unquote, before they turned it into PAX West, when the infamous "Turn on the Fog Machine" chant was born. Because if you're not familiar with PAXmania or the PAX Rumble, it is at PAX. It is a whole bunch of video game personalities getting together and basically playing old wrestling video games, but they've thrown the lens of like wrestling on top of it. So everybody kind of has their own character gimmicks, and they form factions with one another or rivalries, and so they kind of throw just ludicrous, stupid stories into the mix. And I think PAX West, if I recall correctly, is the PAX Rumble. So they had, 30 contestants coming out, and they were doing big old crazy entrances for each contestant, and they had a fog machine that they were turning on and off backstage as people were coming out for their entrances. And apparently enough fog was billowing up and kind of growing backstage that they set off the fire alarms at the convention center at PAX a couple years ago. Had to evacuate the entire show, and then the fire department came, cleared everything, and miraculously they let everybody back in to continue doing the PAX Rumble. So hilarious kind of nonsense caused by a whole bunch of crazy video game people wanting to have fun and embrace their love of video games, as well as a lot of them their love of wrestling and kind of creating wrestling personas. And so when everybody got let back in, Greg Miller, who is the commissioner for the PAX Wrestling in their kayfabe, whenever he would bemoan something that was going on or something that was being stupid in the match, he would just scream out, "Turn on the fog machine," as like a cry to, end everything again. Turn on the fog machine being, let's fucking destroy this whole thing all over again. So that's been a lot of fun, and watching that got me into just watching it at events when I started going to live PAX events, as well as when I'm not. Like if I didn't catch a panel, I would watch it kind of after the fact on a streaming, like the stream archive or the YouTube videos or something like that. So yeah, the wrestling combination crossover with like video game personalities at the PAX Rumble run by the League of Heels, the storylines that they have going and the characters that they've come up with from show to show are just a lot of like wild, crazy, fun antics. The other wrestling adjacent entertainment form that I got into probably a little bit before I really got back into watching wrestling itself was the Schmoedown over at Collider Videos. I got into this because my friend Brianne Chandler at Miss Movies on Twitter, she's a contestant for them. I met Brianne at right after E3 last year. I was out in LA. I didn't go to LA for E3 last year, but I went out for the Let's Play Live that Kind of Funny and Rooster Teeth and Achievement Hunter, all of them put on together in LA. And the day of the event, we had like a little meetup at Buffalo Wild Wings in advance of the event, and I met Brienne there, and we were visiting and hit it off, and I actually remembered her from, she had been like a guest kind of judge, or guest, not guest judge, but a guest like fact checker with Screen Junkies, with their movie fights. And so I was like, oh, like, yeah, I've totally seen you in YouTube videos and stuff. Anyway, so we kind of hit up like an online friendship through that, and then she is a regular guest on the Schmoedown, which is effectively, if you aren't familiar with the Schmoedown, that is a movie trivia competition run by Christian Harloff of Schmoes Know at Collider, and he is a former writer for WWE. He was a writer there for some length of time, I don't know, but he kind of brought his love of wrestling and infused this movie trivia contest with it. And so at its surface, it's, a few rounds of movie trivia. Here's some, like, write down the answers, here's some multiple choice questions we'll give you, and then here's just kind of a few final questions of varying degrees of difficulty. But they've turned it into kind of, there's backstage politicking happening, and there are factions forming, and Brienne is one of the people out there who's really going kind of all in on kind of investing in her entrances and her persona. She had like a big old heel turn recently that kind of started getting her a lot of traction, a lot of heat in the league, and so that was another kind of, again, wrestling adjacent thing that I started watching that I think was kind of fueling my interest in diving back into the drama and storytelling and over-the-top wildness of wrestling itself. So even if I wasn't watching like wrestling matches, I was watching these two very disparate but like uniquely wrestling-infused entities of the PAX Manias, the PAX Rumbles, all that stuff, and the Schmoedown, and I think it really kind of helped set the stage for my return to actually watching Raw and SmackDown and the pay-per-views and all that stuff. So that's what I wanted to talk about this week for Wrestling Wednesday. If you haven't seen either of those shows, I'll certainly link you to some samples in the description below. Highly recommend either or both. Especially if you are a fan of movie trivia or video game personalities, respectively. So let me know if you know of any other kind of wrestling-adjacent things that might be worth my while to check out. As always, I've been your host, Trevor Starkey from TrevorTrove.com. You can follow me at SnarkyStarkey on Twitter. Next week, I'm sure I'll come back with some sort of SummerSlam predictions episode as we lead into SummerSlam. So we'll have that to look forward to. And until next time, from here at the Trove, treasure your friends.